cloud. All right. And Neil, if you see other people coming in, just, yeah, okay. So we have more people every 2 seconds. Welcome, everybody. My name is James and Felton and Keith. I have way too many first names, but you can call me by any of them or any other name that you can remember. It is fine if you don't remember my name. We're really excited to be here, Neil and myself. We're going to go through an overview of the course and some of the country-specific context, and then try to open up for any questions about the course, the parameters of the course, why we're doing this, how it's adopted elsewhere. I see we have some friends online from Latin America, North America, oh, and a singular European. I see as people log in, again, we're just going to record this and then make it available to everybody immediately after. So if you give me 2 seconds, I will start sharing screen. And my screen is pretty ugly and messy in the background. So all right, and and we are, I actually don't know how to present. Where did I go? Slideshow. Okay, play from start.
Yeah,
Bam.
slideshow. Yep.
All right, folks. And well, again, Neil, I don't know if you wanted to say anything first, but anyway, I'm sorry, I keep getting confused because we have a lot of extra people logging in. Anyway, so we're here. Again, hi everyone, I'm James and Felton and Keith. The chairperson here at the DISM Forum. I'm also founder of Inclusion Score. We're a leading software platform in delivering and administering the standard. And Neil, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, James. So my name is Neil Sen. I'm also referred to as Neil, and I've been partnering with James for over a year now, trying to introduce the only globally accredited ISO-30415 program in India, and we've done a lot of work over the last 1 year, and this is going to be one such program that's going to help establish a business process around your DEI efforts across your organizations, if you're a consultant to organizations as well. And what the program will also offer you, should you choose to get certified yourselves and implement the program at your workplaces, is the opportunity to get your organization certified under ISO 30415 under the DISM framework. And that has leverages which we've experienced over the last few years that the program has been live across 4 continents. We've had the DISM forum now has more than 300 registered participants and certified professionals who are driving the program in their geographies. And you get an opportunity to become a part of this forum and contribute to enhancing and continuously evolving the standard as we roll on as well. So those are some of the key benefits of the program. And James has been the co-author, has been the professor who's been running around across the globe trying to introduce the program. We've had major successes in the North American geography. The South American geography has come up very well with a keen degree of interest. Last month, the program was launched in South Africa with an overwhelming response as well. And we've also been able to introduce the program in France, in the European continent, with the government extending its support as well. So This is an opportunity for all DEI professionals, enthusiasts, advocates on the forum today with us to understand the program, to evaluate the benefits of having a certified DEI program in your organizations by virtue of getting certified yourself. Thanks, James. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Neil. Yeah, so we have a few other instructors who will be a part of the course that cannot be here today, but again, Dr. Dawn Bennett Alexander, who wrote the first employment law book and has leveraged, she's a retired legal professor, emeritus legal professor at the University of Georgia, which was our first partner in distributing this certification in the International Standard for Diversity and Inclusion. And she is still involved in the global work of standardizing and partnering with governments to leverage the standard. And then also during the weeks, you'll also meet Ephanis Henderson, who was the original global lead convener of the ISO standard from, I don't know, around 2010 to 2021 when it was initially published. So they'll both chime in here in the course as we move forward. Before we get into, again, some of the country-specific context, I just want to go through some of the benefits of the program. Our main objective here in this program is for you to leave it and be equipped with the tools and tactics to be able to audit any organization in ISO 30415. The next thing is that you'll be able to apply the service management framework or diversity and inclusion service management. Again, similar to IT service management or any other service management framework to create an era of process improvement in your organization. Thirdly, you'll also expand, obviously, your network. We have a broad global network of, at this point, we're at more than 700 different diversity inclusion professionals who are, they span 25 different countries. So, Germany and the UK and the US and, Peru and Colombia and Mexico and South Africa and Australia and India and Singapore and so many others. So you'll get some access. For the people who are on LinkedIn, we have a group there that is great for networking. And last but not least, you'll get this certificate. It looks like we have a typo here from our other course, but we'll just leave it. So you end with the certificate in, again, ISO 30415 as a certified diversity inclusion professional in ISO 30415. Here are some of our testimonies, but again, we've got so many from across the globe. They're all over LinkedIn. They're all over the website, which you'll see. But again, to give you more context on the format of this course, unlike the North American course or at least the US course at 4 weeks, this will be a 5-week course because we'll spend the first week really doing a deep dive into the Indian context specific to the Constitution and competitiveness. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, 5 weeks. And throughout those weeks, we'll do a deep dive into not only what the standard is, but maturity models and how maturity is leveraged to quantify the qualitative efforts that are involved with DEI. And we'll do that starting July 6th on through August 3rd. So it'll be, while the course is asynchronous and you can take the modules on your own at your own leisure, we will have a live session or a live lecture every Saturday at this same time. So July 6th, 13th, 20th, 27th, and August 3rd will be the last session that leads into the open book final exam. Again, we'll have weekly learning objectives. We'll have test prep we'll give quizzes every week, but they are not graded. The only grade that matters is the final exam. And when we use the term case study in this course, we will go through a case study together, but we will do it in each of the live sessions. So it will not be a case study that you have to do on your own or with a separate group. Again, we'll make exceptions for people who absolutely cannot be there. If you just email us, Neil or myself, or our group email, we'll totally understand them. But we would like for everyone to attend at least 3 or 4 of the live Zoom sessions. We'd like it to be as interactive as possible. We'll break everyone into group discussions as we pose questions about the structure of the course. And hopefully everyone will be able to complete the weekly exams. Those exams are priming you for the final exam. And then obviously the final grade is based on getting a 70 or higher score on the final exam that will come at the end of the course. And then we hope at the very end, you'll be generous and take the survey so that we understand how we can get better, things that we can change, etc. This is an example of the certificate in India, obviously facilitated and distributed by Alter Ego. And so that's the basic parameters of the course. Before we move on to more information about why we're here and what we're doing, are there any questions specific to the structure of the course? I see some things in chat, but anything there? Anyway, feel free to go off mute if you like. If you like. I feel like I'm losing my voice. Okay, I'm going to assume no big questions there. So I'm going to move into the second part of the presentation. Go back to sharing screen. I think some of this context will be from you. Oh, we still have people joining. I love that. So again, we have a longer presentation. We'll make this material available to everyone as they join the course, but it will just touch on pieces of this particular presentation. As an American, as an outsider, this is, I think, a brilliant quote from Mahatma Gandhi that Neil pulled in, and our ability to reach unity and diversity will be the beauty and test of our civilization. I think that is true for India and true for our global society. That stated, I think when we look at the Constitution of India, again, as an outsider, as an American, I like to think of it as a step above, a step past, our old Constitution here in the US, and how deliberately inclusive it is, right? And so as this democracy scales and business scales in this democracy, again, here are some articles that establish the intentionality of inclusion across all peoples, again, in the country, no matter, which city or which part they represent. We won't go through each piece, again, unless, Neil, unless you want to add something here, but again, we'll make this available to everyone. And this is that same slide continued. Again, I think when people normally talk about diversity and inclusion, they talk about it as a nice to do thing, a nice to have thing. But this particular global framework was introduced really across the global democracies and business hubs to recognize both the legal implications of a lack of inclusivity and the financial implications of a lack of inclusivity. And so to give you some context, the course that we teach down in Georgia in the United States, the reason we're at the University of Georgia and not other places is because, in that country, they are the #1 ranked school for insurance. And what we're seeing country by country as large insurance companies, as they ensure employment practices at companies, whether they're multinational or transnational companies or just local companies, they are concerned with newer generations coming into the workforce and having issues with the delivery of inclusion in that workforce. So, and the reason that they're concerned is because there are potentially legal ramifications per individuals leveraging the constitution of a country to argue against practices at all of the companies that we work for.
वैसे तो कोई नहीं है, किसी को आना है तो बताओ, मैं निकल
Oh.
लूँ।
Can we get, let's see, who's not on mute? Okay, oh, we got that. See, are there any questions here? Does anyone have questions about this that Neil and I might cover and dig into? Anybody? Let me see, I see. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat box.
No questions, sir.
Okay, so yeah, I think it's important, again, when thinking about using the ISO 30415 standard at your company, is really considering the constitutional and legal incentives to leverage the standard and leverage these consensus of best practices. All right, so I'll move away from that presentation a bit. Again, we can make this presentation available to everybody after this meeting, but we also wanted to bring up one more issue with regards to why we're doing this particular work. So if you consider, oops.
Hi, James, I have a question. So please let me know when can I ask that?
Oh yeah, go ahead, go now. Yes, sure,
Go ahead,
we'd
yeah.
love to hear.
All right, thank you. So nice to hear from you, James and Neil. A long time, good to see you. So thank you. I think this is a very great platform for many of us as professionals to come together and discuss the common agenda that we are driving in our corporate world. I have a question to talk about the ID&E, the DEI, whatever the names that we use in different organizations, and GenI.
Yeah.
Right. Couple of industry leaders have been thinking, and they are working to create a GenI prompt to do activities or initiatives in ID&E, which is more structured, and you know, that should not bring human biases when we are bringing the initiatives or interventions, right? So is there anything that the organization or the DSIM or something that, you know, between James, you and Neil are already working on, if there is anything that has been already patented or copyright is there? Because I think DEI powered by GenI is something that I'm looking forward to learn. So with that, I'll hold my thoughts here and I'll see if anyone else also has similar views on this topic, or we can connect separately offline if I'm not interjecting too much in the agenda. James, back to you.
No, I think that's a great question, and that's exactly why we're here to have this info session. So this is the standard as it exists, again, adopted across 163 countries, India included. And the objective, regardless of the language that we use in India and Canada and Mexico and Germany around EDI, DEI, it may be something else tomorrow. This number, ISO 30415, I know I'm being very acronym heavy, everyone, but it will apply to trying to eliminate biases from building core infrastructure so that institutions are able to tell us who they are so that we can start to include those people. So we like to use, you know, at the DISM forum, at Inclusion Score, we like to use a table setting analogy with regards to what DEI is. What you see here on your screen, this is how the ISO standard looks broken out, and it breaks out even more into 171 or plus different elements. But as it breaks out, this workflows very much so like codifying assets with regards to what the work of diversity, equity, inclusion are, and deploying those through the different types of people in our organization across the different functional parts of our organization. This is not necessarily about diversity. It's more about companies building the infrastructure to distribute inclusion. And so back to that table dressing analogy, they normally ask us, is this a one size fits all solution for every organization? And no, not necessarily. But what it does do is it says this is the best way ergonomically to have dinner. We know that, dinner in Mumbai may look different than dinner in Michigan, may look different than dinner somewhere else. But we know where the salad fork and the soup spoon and the cups and the plates, etc., would ideally go as we want to set up that core infrastructure to begin to have a meal. And specific to, again, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, we generally know the best practices from 40 years of Q&A about what to do when, which is really how we built this standard. And based on that 40 years of Q&A, we know what core infrastructure institutions should have to include people. For instance, if a company, again, in Delhi is looking to plan an International Women's Day event, but they have a board of men planning that event, it is unethical, it is exclusionary, and ultimately it's not going to get the benefit that we want. So the effort of the ISO standard is to transition away from doing ad hoc pet project work around diversity and inclusion, and it moves it towards building core infrastructure like employee resource groups to both first validate the initiatives that we're going to do, right? So we want to know what certain types of people we have in our organization. And then after they validate it through policy, through documentation, which we will teach in the course, then they provide accountability per that documentation, right? To say the women of this organization would like certain things, and that diversity officer, inclusion officer in that organization takes that to management to ask, may we have these things? If not, why? If so, when? Can we build out a timeline? And we get into a practice of delivering diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I'm just going to say D&I for short. But we get used to delivering D&I as a business process based on intentionality and validation of documentation from those employee resource groups, instead of just ad hoc projects that deal with different cultural groups, different gender groups, different disability and neurodivergence, and all sorts of groups that exist. So as far as your question about work that has been done in the global consensus that has been done, this particular consensus is what's starting to move us away from the days of just talking about diversity. We know that diversity exists everywhere. It is evident in human society. Again, even if we reference that Gandhi quote from earlier. But going forward, we have to recognize that every organization is going to look a little different regionally based on the people that work there, based on the people that should work there that don't. And in order to engage them well, we first have to build core infrastructure that allows our organization to regularly create change management, right? We need to turn inclusivity into a proxy of continual process improvement and not just, again, pet projects around culture and gender and age and you name it. So that's precisely what we're offering here. And I think some of our foray into India and working with Neil has been because of comments and conversation and engagement that we've been getting from people at multinational companies in particular who live and work in India. So we've worked with quite a few other people in the country, again, who work for companies that do business outside and inside of India. And they've been asking for, when are we going to start to introduce the standard in an Indian context specifically, and then talk about its constitution and its legal ramifications. So I know that I'm a bit long-winded, so feel free to cut in and tell me to be quiet, and ask more questions. But yeah, this is that framework. And we'd love to collaborate with and talk to whoever else and any other organizations and initiatives that you're familiar with that are looking to implement standards. There are 8 billion people on the planet. We need to put all of them to work, and we need to distribute capital and, you know, housing and shelter and dignity and agency to all of them. So this is not something that we look to do in a vacuum. We want to work with anyone that's available, because honestly, this work is too daunting to do on our own, or to try to, you know, own it as individual companies. What you even see here on the screen, these are multiple companies working together, just because this work absolutely must be done. So any other questions along, you know, that line? I'm going to pull up this group and
No,
invite.
thank you, James. I think quite relevant points that you've called out. I
Yeah.
have few rather suggestions or maybe inputs that I can provide from, at least from my side. I work for Kyndryl, and I'll reach out to James, you and Neil offline, and I'll share something that we perhaps can include as part of the larger
Okay.
initiative that we're driving at a global level. So
Let's do it.
very, very keen to volunteer. Thanks.
Yeah, no,
Thanks
thank
for
you. Like
the call.
we'd love to do it together. So I'm just adding some links to the chat. I don't know if you all can see the chat on my screen as it's live, but anyway, so I'm gonna add some of those. And then again, let's go back to competitiveness. And you know, I think this is some data that, Neil, I don't know if you want to dig into this, but I think this is the main value proposition for the standardization of DEI in India. And it's really about, and I'm saying this as an American, about India being more competitive and beating basically the US and China in productivity and economic output. The deliberate nature of the international standard for diversity and inclusion, I think, is a catalyst for all the institutions, business and government in India to engage, include, and distribute, again, more access to agency to more people via the business market. And Neil, I don't know if you wanted to. Yeah, I don't even know where to say. Where to start.
No, so thanks, James. So what we wanted, and we'll still be part of the course curriculum for sure, once you register for that. What we have in a screen right now is the IMD, the International Institute for Management Development, in Switzerland. Now, IMD for the last 35 years has been publishing a World Competitiveness Report. This World Competitiveness Report is compiled with inputs from more than 60 countries across the globe. And this is not an indigenous report. It is based on data that is provided by the government of each of these 60 plus countries on more than 300 elements of data that is measured. And on the indexing scale and on the ranking scale, when you look at the screen in front of you at an overall level, out of 64 countries that have been participating over these years, India is currently poised at 40. And it slipped down 3 positions last year as compared to 2022. The 2024 report is going to be out by the end of this month, which will reveal if we've made any progress compared to 2023. Now, if you further go down the next slide, you would see, and you see these material, the rankings across infrastructure, like James was mentioning, across the economic development, across societal framework, etc. But one of the reasons why India has been recording at almost close to the bottom quartile here, this is the slide. So if you see, societal framework is one of those key contributors along with health and education that is contributing to pulling India's scores down. And when we further broke down the report to look at specifics, it was very evident that the D&I at work was causing these to the ranks go down. So you have the wage ratios that are lower compared to global standards. You have the unemployment rates across genders that's causing the rating to go down, and equal opportunity legislations in the economy, which encourages economic development. So what we've discovered over the last 1 year, which you will see as a part of the program, is Indian Constitution does have legislations that promote, support, and foster inclusivity. It is just that the private sector or individuals like us have been so much into the run and go of our day-to-day lives that we have possibly not ventured into discovering how we could actually optimally utilize the rights that have been conferred upon us as citizens equally. So we've designed the program in a way that you will get to understand that employees in your organizations or individuals in your societies and in your cities all have equal rights as bestowed upon them by the Constitution of India. It's just that we've not been able to leverage it as a nation to the benefit, but there have been eye-opening historic landmark judgments. We'll walk you through those as well, which have started tilting the scales of all the equality fostering articles in our Constitution to start driving into individual behaviors, into organizational processes and protocols. And you'd see in the program how some of these historic landmark judgments have caused individuals who have been discriminated on any grounds, be it race, gender, be it disability, they have been able to establish milestones by virtue of taking their fight to the courts of law. So there is legislation around it. It's just that we have not been able to optimally leverage that from an equal opportunity legislation perspective. We also have an equal opportunity employment act that is there in place. But again, we've not been able to leverage that as well. So what I'm trying to point out here is when you look at the country's progress, when measured on a global index, we're comparatively low. One of the primary factors why we are low is because we've not been able to optimally leverage DEI in our process framework as an organization, in our legislation as a country. While individual citizens have their rights, and should they decide to invoke their rights for their benefit tomorrow, not only will an individual stand the chance to be, let's say, reprimanded or penalized for that, even organizations stand the risk, which is what we witnessed in the North American region as well, where insurance companies who are insuring corporates have started pulling the levers in terms of looking at what is your risk in terms of discrimination suits being raised against you. Now, tomorrow, there could be a discrimination suit by virtue of performance appraisal. It could be by virtue of recruitment from a human resource perspective. It could be by virtue of discrimination in the supplier diversity that your organization has, or even in terms of the product and service delivery. So I was in this session in the afternoon, a webinar on Pride Month, and we were talking about inclusive organization, and we came up with an organization that is in India employing a variety of individuals across the diversity framework. And diversity in this program does not just restrict to race, gender, caste, creed, sex, place of birth. There are 27 diversity standards that the ISO-30415 has been able to establish, which cuts across all geography. So this organization has been able to get inclusive by employing staff, but their practices have not been established. So these are opportunities where the framework comes into play and establishes measurable, tangible policies, programs that drive diversity and inclusion in your organization. They are audited, measured, and reported. So like you have the ISO 27001, which has culminated into the ITSM, the Information Technology Service Management Manual. That is what D&I has been able to come up with using ISO 30415 globally to come up with the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management Manual. And that is what we did.
I see we have a question. Was just really before
Hi.
the question, I just want to give a little quick context on what Neil was talking about. If some of you are old enough like me to remember ISO 20000 and IT service management, again, and what we did 20 years ago in 2005, this is very similar to what we're doing here with ISO 30415 now in 2024. So just to give you some context, but yeah, let's get to the question chat.
Yeah. If may I ask the question now, or
Yes.
should I put?
Go ahead.
Okay, just a quick query. Just a quick query about the societal index. If I recall, that was what it is stated. I saw that India had a pretty low score, despite having some affirmative action in from the government side for with respect to gender diversity and equality. My guess is guess, and again a quick clarification on that is it only because right now the diversity angle from Indian government is focused predominantly on gender diversification and not on the larger other aspects. We mentioned 27 other diversity angles, but probably the Indian government's framework has still not evolved enough to include or consider the others as important parameters. Is that one of the reasons for India being so low on the score?
No, I think, and that's a great question, and thank you for raising that. I'm sure the audience is going to benefit from this. So, Mr. Dujati, what has happened over the years is the economy has moved to be a for-profit economy completely driven by internal conditions that employers have been driving at their end. Now, DEI in India came in by virtue of a lot of global institutions setting up shop here and promoting the international global culture that they had been embracing. When we talk about the Indian legislation, the legislation does not discriminate. So if you look at and we'll walk you through the Indian constitutional legislations as well, it prohibits any kind of discrimination, whether gender, whether age, whether caste, whether creed. The affirmative actions do exist. The affirmative actions are being measured as they are applied and reported in the public sector. So for public sector jobs, admissions into institutions that are sponsored by the public sector, all of them are measured against the affirmative quotas that have been assigned to them. In the event that those positions do not get filled because there isn't enough of a talent pool, then those positions continue to stay vacant. However, the point that we are trying to put across is those legislations apply to you, to me, to any other citizen of the country equally, whether gender, whether caste, whether creed, whether religion, whether place of birth, etc. It is just that the private sector has not taken enough cognizance of the rights and the duties that individuals have been conferred upon by virtue of the Constitution. What we are looking at as an HR organization within our organizations is we are looking at the acts that apply to us from a labor department perspective. So the Payment of Wages Act, the Equal Remuneration Act, although we are not adhering to Equal Remuneration Act per se. And we're looking at the PF Act, the SIC Act, etc. However, from a D&I perspective, in the gamut of human resources also, we are not looking at whether we have positioned our policies and programs to accommodate all the provisions of legislation that the Constitution confers upon us. And tomorrow, if I, as an employee or as a citizen of the country, raise my voice by invoking Article 226 in a high court, or the court takes cognizance of my discrimination because I go to public through social media or through other channels, and a suo motu is triggered by the highest court of India, then the discrimination context will not stay restricted only to the public sector. It is going to flow to any company, any organization, and even an individual. So we'll walk you through those landmark cases where individuals have been incriminated because of discriminatory actions that they have taken against another individual. And these are all historical judgments. So today, an employee does not come up to you when you, let's say, rate him a bottom performer or an average performer because there is not enough knowledge that an employee has, whether it's been a case of discrimination or purely driven by data and not perceptions. But tomorrow, as employees get more and more aware of their rights and are fully versed with their constitutional authorities and rights, this is going to be a very different ballgame. And once this changes, this is going to, let's say, administer a level of risk that will need to be contained by deploying a business process. That being said, the other advantage of the program that we've seen across 25 countries that we've been traveling across the globe over the last few years is when you look at branding yourself as an inclusive employer, there are programs, there are reward and recognitions, and like James said a short while ago, there are pockets of excellence that you're driving. So some of your inclusion programs are driven by virtue of CSR, some are driven by virtue of programs and policies or job roles that you've been able to cut across. But when you look at a private organization conforming to D&I from the perspective of employer branding, when you have the standard of certification accredited to your organization and to you as an individual, you don't need to establish through any other channels that you are an inclusive employer. That certification and that stamp of certification itself is proof of the fact that you have acquired a level of maturity in your business processes to embrace D&I. Your ESG reporting, your SDG reporting, all of those are simply covered when you say I am ISO-30415 certified organization. So that's the difference that it makes. But yes, to your point, there are legislations. As an employee in your organization, I can invoke it if I feel I'm being discriminated. Has it happened till now? Yes. There are historic landmark judgments that have been happening and we're not referring back to pre-independence era. It's post-independence between the years of 1980s to 2000s that such judgments have happened. And should an employee choose to invoke that in today's world, yes, the court will give them a patient hearing and will decide on what is meritorious with the petitioner or with the respondent.
Thank
Oh, go ahead. Yep. Okay.
What
Any
else, James?
questions? I just wanted to share this Google Doc for the sign up. Neil, I think this is the right document.
I'll post the links as well.
Okay, you got, okay. So, okay, I see a few more questions. Per the questions in the chat, I added links to the websites. And again, I think during the course, in this info session, we've talked a lot about the structure of the course, the context of the country, and why we're here. But per the actual material of the course, we're going to spend 5 weeks going over how one might audit and the workflow, like what happens first, second, third, fourth, and a variety of scenarios that may or may not be relevant to your organization, but will be relevant to your peers' organization, whether you work at a big company or a small company, or whether you're a consultant and you want to interact with a bunch of companies. Okay, right, yeah, and so there's also the link in the chat to register. But I see Honey on the screen. You have a question? I just thought because you turn your camera on, you might have a question. It's fine. So,
No, I am actually very new to DIB. Hi, my name is Hani Kumari. I'm a training and placement officer. Yes, I do support this subject, but I'm not very aware of it. So I'm a member of NHRD, and that's how I got the link. And I'm pretty excited to know all this because it's so new to me. In fact, I was in the previous session also. So yeah, very much keen to support in whatever way I can.
Thank you, Hani.
And
Priya, you have a question.
Yeah, hi Neil, hi James. I've been following regular follow-up on DISM, and James, I have seen your previous videos as well.
Oh.
And I was planning to enroll. I have this one question on this, that if someone is working on globally, like I've been working in Middle East and UAE and working on MENA region and India. So how this course is going to help, that this is going to target only India, or it is also looking into the UAE and the Middle East part as well, or global side. So I really want to know into that.
Oh,
Can I
Neil,
pick that up?
it-
Okay.
yeah, it's
So
global. Oh, go ahead.
it's a global standard, Priya. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Right.
There you go.
Go ahead. So, Priya, the intent is it's a global standard, like any other ISO standard that you have, whether be it IT, whether ESG, whether EHS, anything. So, it's a global standard accredited by the International Standard Organization, covers the 32 risk elements, the 27 diversity types, the 4 project types, and of course, gets to score an organization on the maturity model that they have for D&I business processes at their end. So that's global. The reason why we have an additional week's curriculum from an India standpoint is if you work for the UAE or the MENA region, you'd see the UAE Ministry of Labor has some very clear guidelines in terms
Right.
of the applicable legislations, including an up to diversity, and so does Singapore have that under Ministry of Labor. However, the reason why we included an India context to this is because India's legislations have been, let's say, perpetually been ignored, or awareness has not been created around that. And the intent was to add value. So while the original program is for 4 weeks across
Okay.
North America, the intent was to add 1 more week so that we can equip you as professionals leading human resources, product services delivery, supplier SCM management, to understand what kind of legislative impacts an organization like yours could have, and how those could be baked in using those 170 plus risk elements in building your processes, policies, and your programs aligned to it. So that's the additional bit of a freebie that we have for the India program launched this time around. But otherwise, the standard is global. You could apply the standard irrespective of the region that you are in once you're certified. And it's a
Okay.
standard global program that we've been driving across 4 continents.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, just to add some color to that, I just wrapped up the course in South Africa, and it's regional. There were people in there from other countries in Southern Africa, but there were participants from Ford Motor Company that are leading the standard into Ford Motor Company again in the US. I know that, of course, they're everywhere. They're in India, etc. I'd also say some of our previous cohort members in the US who work in India, live in India, like for instance, with companies like John Deere, they leverage, and this may speak to some of the comments that Honey made earlier about being new to this. I think leveraging the standard is a great way to initially introduce yourself to at least the structure of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and access, and the letters keep growing, and justice, and you name it. But I think it's a great way to introduce yourself and then leverage it through your organization if you are talking to people, again, locally or internationally. But yeah, that woman at John Deere, she then took the standard to her global inclusion lead, and we had a series of calls with them about how they can help working with John Deere both in Australia and the United States and South America, and you name it. So when we launch one of these programs in any given country, we try to give that local context because every country is doing something, like in South Africa, they have post-apartheid, they have a lot of new laws, but their constitution is, again, I think similar to India's. It's a bit more inclusive in the language than the American Constitution, right? So even as they have certain initiatives around certain people in that country, they're realizing how they can use this standard to guide those initiatives that may be cultural specific only, right? So yeah, that's that extra week of context. I know I'm being redundant and saying a bit of what Neil said, but just giving some perspective from other places. And we see that in Mexico and Peru and Colombia. I see we have some of our peers who teach the courses there. Those courses are a bit longer because they're given local context and language context sometimes. The French course, for instance, will be 9 weeks because there's a lot of French context. So anyway, well, I want to be respectful for everyone's time. We have, if we need it, we have about 6 minutes left. If there are any questions at all, if you don't like my glasses, we could talk about that. Anything works. It's no, I won't be offended. I will be offended, but I'll cry later, but it'll be fine. So if there are no questions, we'll again crop this video. We'll post it and send it to all of you and the participants who couldn't make it today. Yep, I see we have one more question.
I would like to know that one is that there is an ISO certification that has been launched, and we are sensitizing ourselves with the concept of DIB. Second is that I teach students, MBA students in a college, very simple average college, but and the subject itself is too sensitive to just talk. Sometimes like I learned that there is a notation called MO, which is new to me.
Yeah.
So, what is it that we can do, like in our own little way, of course, like when you have a lot of big things and these are sensitive topics, it's important to start like a small cookie and then go with the the things seep in, right? So that it's not overwhelming for people.
Totally.
So, what can we do at college level to support you? We have a CSR cell.
Well, I think we can teach again the standard and add it to the core curriculum. I know, Neil, you probably have some thoughts on this and things you want to add, but I will say we've seen in other universities in many countries adding this to both the literature, so that whatever books everyone is reading, but also adding a core component to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion as a business process, especially if you're talking to business students. And there's a way to do that. We talk a lot about that in this course, right? So we don't necessarily have to talk about it culturally. We can talk about it where institutions.
Yeah, like I was reading a book and there's a pre-diversity assessment test and a post-diversity assessment test. So I was just creating that, let me take a survey of my students. What do you think? Because it's a very simple tool that, okay, in a certain way, I respond in a certain way. And then I have the necessary soft skills or the mindfulness and a lot of other things. And then over the period of time, I do educate myself to become a better human being. And then, of course, the details of the... I mean, in corporate parlance, I would say the extravaganzas involved with a lot of, vigilant little things that we should become aware of.
No, that's a wonderful question. In fact, what I wanted to give you a context of is James himself is teaching the subject in multiple business universities in North America. So, University of Georgia, last week he was at Wisconsin in their business school talking about the subject. So, what the program is going to equip you with is not just the standard. So the standard is one of the offerings of the program where you understand the 170 plus risk elements, you understand the 27 diversity types and the maturity models, and you can get your organization certified as well. Now that would be an academic organization, that would be an educational institution, that would be a for-profit or a not-for-profit organization as well. What you also will get along with this course is the book that the DISM forum has published, and there have been multiple iterations thereafter. So the DISM framework, it's a book that James has authored, and he's been supported with the cohorts that have passed through this program over the last few years. And that book then becomes a manual for you to adopt and apply at your place of work. That would be your college, that would be a university, that would be a workplace. And what that will do is, when you get the book, you will see it starts off with how the sensitization needs to be done. So when you understand the diversity types, when you understand the factors that contribute to that diversity and how those need to be additionally addressed and educated using the framework in the DISM manual book, you'll understand how to use that even if you were teaching a group of students about D&I. And that could be a manual or a book that you could pass down to them while you will give you your book.
Or we modify it. I think the other thing is, as we grow into different areas, like we'll be publishing a a regional specific book, similar to some of the slides that you all saw with Neil, to again talk about the standard in the Indian context. I think as we see versions of the manual and the service management framework grow, we'll see them start to modify based on country-specific needs, based on new things that we learn about the culture of business. Because that's essentially all we're doing. Every company, every institution is just a makeup of individuals. And, you know, we like to say that, you know, both individuals are at their best when they identify with a community. We see that everywhere. But communities are only at their best when they identify all of their individuals. And what that does is it suggests this continuous improvement portion to how society grows. As we identify more of who we are, we not only are able to plug those people into the workforce as employees, but forget employees for a minute, we're also able to identify them as people in needs of goods, both products and services. And what we're seeing in India, just like everywhere else, is we're seeing more people self-identify and tell us what they need from the business community. And that is really driving diversity and inclusion. Like, we see women in a new context than we ever have. We see men in different contexts. We see neurodivergence. We see disability. We see race and caste and ethnicity and so many things in microcosms in a way that we haven't before. And if our objective, which I think it is to connect with each other and prop up life. If I just think about my industry, the insurance industry, our objective, and people never talk about insurance this way, but it is true. Our objective is to secure life and property. That's all we do. We try to identify it first, but we're here to secure lives and property. And as we do that, and more people tell us who they are and what sort of property they need, we want to create it for them. So that's the real driver. And as we do that, if we work with your program and your students, if we work regionally, you know, as we scale into the continent, we will need you all to help modify the language that we distribute inclusivity with. So this is very much all hands on deck. After the course, we're all speaking the same language, but then at that point we're peers. And so we need to know what you think as much as, you know, we have opinions to give to you. So
you become part of the DISM forum. You connect with us. We do engage with you. You give us your challenges, your situations, and we also look at not just facilitating you to swim out of that situation, but we also take the qualitative aspects of that to further enhance and improve on the standard. And this is going to be an ongoing journey, like James said earlier, of continuous evolution that we're going to go through. So as the first cohort of India, you will be playing a very key role in terms of sharing your conditions, your situations, your opportunities, and we will be looking at how, through your contribution into the larger forum, we will be going to be taking this in as a part of the standard. And as we roll on, you would become a part of the larger global community that will be driving D&I in your societies and in your workplace, applying the standards as they evolve continually.
Yeah.
And it's going to be based on your input. So we're not going to go to United Nations to ask for a key feature to enhance the standard. It's going to be basis of the practitioners of the program globally coming on one forum. We have the next forum of the DISM is scheduled in October, where we're going to be collectively across the globe, we're going to be collectively coming together and looking at how there are been new elements from the time the standard was launched and how we're going to be looking at enhancing it in terms of including additional elements that the society has evolved into, the economy has evolved into over the past few years. So that is the benefit. So you're going to be associated in not just getting yourself certified, but you're also going to be looking at contributing to the larger purpose and objective of D&I within your regions and globally as well.
Yep. All right. I think we're a little over 4 minutes over. If there are any extra questions, feel free to
Yeah,
email us.
I've keyed down my email address and my handphone number, so please feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to engage in a discussion to get any questions clarified, shared any additional information and details that you need. And just to let you know, the standard, and James, if in the event you have that slide open. So this program, when it was launched, and now that it is in motion across multiple geographies, the cost of the program that applies in the US or in the North America, as against that, the program that we are launching right now in India is at a close to 40% discount for the first cohort that we are going to start off from the first week of July for the schedule that James shared. So it's at a 40% discount. If you need additional financial assistance, we are here to hear you out and look at it. We have group discounts for individuals from the same organization or individuals from same groups, associations coming together, wanting to get their certifications done. So it's all there on the link that we've provided to you. It's on our website as well. The link is on the chat. We'll be sharing these links with you individually as well in the days to come for you to go through more. So it's the intent of the program is to build our first cohort in India to take India to the global standards of establishing D&I in this region. So it has been poised at a very discounted rate, and you would see that on the registration site. And as we move along, this is that first cohort that we'd always want to tag along with us as we evolve the standard and have the subsequent cohorts come in the subsequent times to come.
I tried to find a slide. I'm
No worries.
buried in document.
I can present that. I have the papers.
All right. Thank you, everyone. It's funny. It looks like we have people logging in right now. Anyway, for anyone just logging in, we're going to make the video available and send it to everyone today. So you'll have it whenever you're back in your email. But all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.